Welcome to These Kids Can't Wait, discovering the world of rare disease. Today, I'm excited to introduce Sarah Forsman, an inspiring advocate and voice for the rare disease community. Born with Alpha-Mannosidosis, Sarah faced incredible challenges early on, including undergoing a bone marrow transplant at just 4.5 years old. Despite these obstacles, she's thriving as an undergrad, set to graduate with a bachelor's in marketing this May. In 2020, Sarah started her blog, Achieve the Impossible Today, where she shares her personal journey with alpha-mannosidosis and the lessons she's learned along the way. On February 28th, which is National Rare Disease Day, Sarah will be launching her first podcast, It's a Rare Story, aimed at bringing hope to the rare disease and disability communities by providing a platform for others to share their stories. In addition to her personal work, Sarah has been an integral part of ISMRD since 2021, joining the board and becoming the communications officer in 2023. She helps connect the community by managing social media, maintaining their website, and overseeing email communications. So please join me in welcoming Sarah Forsman to our show. Sarah, we'd love to hear a little bit more about yourself and your journey with alpha-mannosidosis.
Yeah, so I was born with Alpha-Mannosidosis, and from the day I was born, my mom knew that something was up, but she had no idea what it was, and turned out to be Alpha-Mannosidosis. We found this out when I was 3.5. That is when I got an official diagnosis, and it's been a journey ever since.
Wow. And alpha-mannosidosis is like you said, a very rare disease that many people haven't heard of. How would you describe it to someone you've just met?
So I get asked about my story a lot. So whenever I just am in that conversation with them, I'm just like, yeah, so I was born with a rare disease, and it's a disease that really affects every single cell in the body because I'm missing or deficient in one enzyme. And with being deficient in that one enzyme, it wreaks havoc on the whole entire body. And I've had challenges with my bones, muscles, my brain. Um, I had a skull reconstructive surgery when I was 1.5 years, and so that's just a few of the things that I've dealt with.
Yeah. And you have undergone a bone marrow transplant when you were 4.5 years old. Tell me about that. I don't know if you remember, obviously, but tell us what that did for you and your condition.
Yeah, sure. Um, yeah, it was a while ago, and I for sure do not remember that. So one of the things with alpha mannosidosis is the memory for me has been really affected. So I don't remember any of my childhood. So my parents have told me a lot about my childhood just because there's no memory. Um, but yeah, so for alpha mannosidosis, it's been shown that bone marrow transplants actually stop it from progressing because it's a degenerative disease. So if I never had gotten that bone marrow transplant, my life today would most likely be in a wheelchair, barely communicating, and not being able to really do much.
Yeah, that's incredible. Are there people with alpha-mannosidosis and patients that don't know about this bone marrow transplant and the treatments out there for it?
Yeah, so today there are actually two different treatment options for alpha mannosidosis, and one of them is bone marrow transplant. But there's a newer treatment that recently got approved in the US by the FDA, but it's an enzyme replacement therapy. And today there's a lot of patients that they hear about enzyme replacement therapy, but sometimes they're not even told that bone marrow transplant is an option. And then others hear that bone marrow transplant is too risky, and they are really just informed to go with the enzyme replacement therapy. But I've never done enzyme replacement therapy,
You
and I
haven't
think
needed it,
it's
right?
no, it was never a thing when I was younger. Looking back, I think it would have helped my body a lot, because there was a year period where I was waiting for that bone marrow transplant, because I got diagnosed at 3.5, and then I had the bone marrow transplant at 4.5. But in that year time, my body is degenerating. So the enzyme replacement therapy is actually used to stop the disease from progressing as quickly. And it doesn't get through the blood brain barrier, which is one of the challenges with it. But right now, it is a great, like, in between before someone gets a bone marrow transplant.
What was the process like for your family in deciding to go forward with a bone marrow transplant?
That's honestly a great question. We get asked that a lot, just because bone marrow transplants are super involved, and also really risky. From just my mom, like, sharing this story of, them finding out that there was a treatment option, my mom was so excited that there was a treatment option, because they saw what could happen, if a bone marrow transplant was never an option, because it deteriorates the body, and my parents saw that, and they wanted to do everything that they could, to give me the best possible life.
Yeah, I bet everybody or every parent wants that. How did the treatment impact your health over time? And were there any major changes or challenges you faced growing up?
Um, yeah, transplant, with the chemo drugs that are used, there's different chemo drugs, and they affect different parts of the body. So after transplant, I had weaker bones. And that's been something that we've just had to work on and make sure that my bones were strong. There was a time in middle school, like the summer before high school, so I don't know where I am, in that age, but I broke my foot. But I broke my foot running in the ocean, and I just, like, tripped and fell, and my foot broke. So my bones were definitely weaker, and that was, I believe, something that came from the chemo. And then even with being female, I had some hormonal issues growing up. I no longer do, so I'm thankful for that. But growing up, my emotions were wild, and there's no there's, like, no easier way to say that. Yeah, so that was just from the chemo drugs. Um, but I also just wanna say that with having a bone marrow transplant, yes, it stops the disease from progressing, but any of the, deterioration that had already happened in the body, it it was still there. It didn't just disappear. Now, I had hearing issues, and I had hearing aids, but one of the things that bone marrow transplants actually does, in some of the cases, are it brings the hearing back. And there's some
Wow.
scientific reason for that, but I don't know exactly the scientific reason. Um, so I no longer have hearing aids, but that was one of the few things that came back. But I had muscle issues still after. Um, I had bone issues, and that was because of the treatment, but also because of the disease I was born with. There was a lot of challenges, and I'm trying to just go through them. But even cognitively, like, I had a lot of brain issues still after, because my brain, it didn't wire properly, um, with have with having the disease. So, I've gone through a lot of different therapies growing up. I went through physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, equine therapy, where I rode horses to help with my muscles, and to just grow stronger. And then even with the all of the brain challenges I had. Most recently, I went to a functional neurologist, and he was able to get the two hemispheres of the brain to be operating better. And he really worked on rewiring my brain so that I would be able to live in this society that's very busy, because I was still having so many brain challenges, even up until like 2 years ago. Like, it's something that if you don't rebuild, it's going to stay the same. So
Yeah.
throughout my whole entire journey, I've had to rebuild. Um, and it shows how magnificent our bodies are,
Yeah.
because we're able to get back to where we're supposed to be, really. Um, in school growing up, I had some challenges, just with processing. People always they spoke, and people, for me, they spoke too fast. So I was missing a lot of the information. And even like in school, I had an IEP until high school, and then I was in a bad car accident, and then I had to get a 504. So it's just it's life. But yeah, so um sorry, I'm trying to just think of what I'm saying.
No, but
Um
that's fascinating to hear, your experience growing up and how alpha-mannosidosis had affected you and how the bone marrow transplant affected you and how you had to overcome both of those challenges and continue to grow and develop and, like you said, rebuild everything. And that's one thing that we've noticed with Skylar. If we're not continuing with PT and OT, there's a lot of skills that she's losing quicker than she can maintain. And so one week, if we're not out on the trampoline jumping, and we put her on a trampoline the next week, she almost has to relearn what her body needs to do to get her feet off the ground. We have to continually push those motor skills and fine motor skills with her, or she's losing that. And so, I can imagine after having a bone marrow transplant, it must have been so hard rebuilding all of those skills again and trying to strengthen your body and trying to process things at the same time. Your body went through so much, your brain went through so much. So I think it's just incredible.
yeah, and it's really wild, the whole entire the process of the bone marrow transplant. I know it's changed in today's situation, because, or well, today's standard, like, um I got my bone marrow transplant 21 years ago, and a lot has happened in 21 years, especially in the medical community. So now today, like, families, they're able to go through the process a little bit easier. I know for me, um, I had to be in isolation for like a year. I couldn't really see anyone, but I know that now it's like isolation for like 3 to 6 months or something like that. It's changed a lot. And I also have heard that the chemo drugs are not as strong as the ones that I had. And also, like, just growing up, um, I had a craniofacial reconstructive surgery when I was a year and a half. And last year, I was at a conference, and I saw on a research poster that the craniofacial challenges that I had, is now linked to what I was born with. And for years, they thought it was just something completely different, but it wasn't. And I'm like, amazing. This is great that the community is now realizing that, yeah, we may have just a different way that the bones in our skull form. um, so with having that surgery, um, one side looks like a really cool like Harry Potter scar, but the other side is a lot thicker. And for years, I didn't understand what it was that I even went through, because I was a year and a half and then I had no memory. But like before I even started the process of coming to terms with what I went through, there was a time when I was I'm pretty sure I was in middle school, but I was in Girl Scouts and we were braiding each other's hair, and I had someone, braiding my hair, and then they saw the scar and they screamed. Um,
Oh,
and I I don't blame them at all for doing that because they didn't know. It's not normal for someone to have a scar on their head. So it wasn't a fantastic experience, but it was one of the things that I had challenges with. But then years later, I shaved the side of my head to show my scar off. So,
that's kind of
um,
cool. I've seen pictures and I thought it looked awesome.
thank you. I have now since grown my shave side out, but um, that was a part of healing for me. And there's been a lot of just different times where I've gone through healing, and even like not even understanding why, but then having an understanding of like, oh, okay, this is just part of my story, even if I don't have any memory of it.
Yeah.
It's part of my story.
Well, it sounds like there was so much trauma afflicted on your body, and you have
Mhm.
just healed and adapted to that so well. Like, I can't believe we're having this conversation, and you've been through everything you have. So here's a question. If you could go back and give your younger self, or other kids going through similar challenges advice, what would you say?
Yeah, great question. I honestly wish I had that answer when I was younger because I would have looked at life a lot differently. So growing up, with all of the different challenges, I never understood like why I had to go through all of the things that I've gone through. And it's been challenging for me even to be okay with everything. But for me, it's really just been a journey of faith. And it's it's something where we might not understand why like we have to like go through different circumstances that we go through, because we all go through different things. It doesn't have to be a rare disease. It really does not have to. But I would have told myself, when like years ago, that I would be okay and that there would be comfort and peace that I would feel along the way, and that I might not have the answers. And I honestly still don't have the answers as to why I was born with alpha-mannosidosis, because there's also many, many, many rare diseases. Um, but I've been given breath in my lungs and I'm still here today. So that is, I think, my answer.
That's beautiful. Do you feel like you're stronger today because of what you went through?
I definitely feel like, because of what it is that I've gone through, I have a very unique perspective, because I've seen a lot of things that people don't typically have the opportunity to see. Um, And I feel like because of seeing everything, it gives me a new perspective on life. And in a sense, it makes me so compassionate towards anyone who is going through any sort of challenge, whether it be with a rare disease or with a disability.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what makes you such a great advocate for other people with rare disease and for people with alpha-mannosidosis. And you do a little bit of that through ISMRD, correct? Tell me about
Mhm.
your role at ISMRD and what it stands for.
Sure, yeah. ISMRD is an acronym, and it's an acronym for the International Society for Mannosidosis and Related Diseases. Um, and so we, as an organization, are the international advocate for glycoprotein storage diseases. Now, we have mannosidosis in our name because when ISMRD was first formed, it was started by um, really for alpha-mannosidosis, and then along the way, they added the other glycoprotein storage diseases. So that's why we are the international advocate for those diseases. So for me, I'm currently the communications officer, and my job really is just to take care of any of the marketing and communications work that an organization does. So currently, I manage the social media, um, emails that we send out, and then any updates for our website.
Got it. And I think being a patient makes you such a strong advocate for other patients who are struggling with rare disease and alpha-mannosidosis. What is some of the work you're doing to advocate for others?
Yeah, so I have a few projects that I am working on, but back in 2020, I started a blog called Achieve the Impossible Today. Um, yeah, so it is a blog where I just share my story with anything that I'm learning in life, anything that I'm going through in life. And I also just use it as a platform to share about alpha-mannosidosis. I've had different families find me because of the blog that I have, which is
Wow,
really cool. And
that is.
is great because I'm like, "Oh my gosh, people actually are finding my blog."
Mhm.
Because there's a lot of different things on the internet. So, um, but yeah, so I try to be consistent with it, but consistency is a little challenging for me, and I'm slowly working on getting better at that. And then I am releasing a podcast on February 28th, and it is called It's a Rare Story. And so this podcast is really just focused on allowing others to share their story with having either a rare disease or any type of disability, because I believe that when someone receives a diagnosis of whatever it may be, it's not the end of the road. It might cause different challenges in their life that they were not expecting, but they they're still able to live and just do different things. It might look a little different than what it looks like for someone else, but that's okay. And I'm really just hoping to bring some hope to this space.
Well, I think it's fascinating that you're going to be talking to patients and their stories and how they've overcome, these rare diseases. I don't think I've heard a podcast that does that, and so that's why I had you on. But there's going to be a whole podcast about it, which I think is great. Which I think there is a need for that. And I'm really excited for it to come out and to listen to it. Um, so, what are your hopes for the future?
Yeah, so my hopes for the future, really that I live a life just advocating for those with rare diseases and for disabilities. And nothing, like my blog says, nothing is impossible. And it's all about doing things that may have been once impossible because of what I was born with. And nothing, nothing is out of the ordinary. Um, my life has been far from ordinary. And I want really to just bring awareness to rare diseases and disabilities and allow for all of us to just gather together and sharing our stories, and that we can just hold hands together as we go through life.
Yeah. And I think there's a need for that. It's nice to have that community and that support when you're going through those challenges. How can listeners support the rare disease community and research for better treatments?
Yeah, with supporting the rare disease community, it's really like, yeah, people will say donate, donate, donate. And of course, we all do need more money because research is expensive. But the even like if you find yourself like, I cannot donate any money right now, I would really just say like, it can just be like sharing a story, like sharing this podcast with someone, sharing a blog or anything that is related around rare disease so that there can be more just information out there, so that the information gets to other people, because there's some rare diseases that are very well known, but then there's other rare diseases like the glycoprotein storage diseases, um, that aren't really that well known. And so the best thing to do is to just share about that. And if you don't know what to share, share something that has been posted online and just start the conversation of like, this is something that needs to be shared. And yeah, I don't know if that's a good answer, but
No, that's perfect. Well, a huge thank you to Sarah for sharing her incredible journey and passion for supporting the rare disease community. Be sure to check out her blog, Achieve the Impossible Today, and keep an eye out for her upcoming podcast, It's a Rare Story. And that's launching February 28th, National Rare Disease Day. You don't want to miss it. If you've enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with others who might find it inspiring. Until next time, stay connected, stay hopeful, and remember, it's our stories that make us stronger. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on These Kids Can't Wait. Every story shared brings us one step closer to awareness, advocacy, and action. If you've been inspired, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode.
To learn more about the Lost Enzyme Project or donate to the cause, you can visit our website, Instagram, or Facebook page. Those links will be provided in the show notes below. Thank you again, and remember, these kids can't wait, but together, we can make a difference.